introduce our next speaker today, Dr. Satenik Chookaszian. He's professor of Armenian art history at Yerevan State University. So this is like aula. She's also head of the Decorative Applied Arts Department of the National Gallery of Armenia, and one of her major research focuses in is Armenian silverworks. And today, Satenik will present on silver belts and jewelry from the collection of the National Gallery of Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. Really? Okay, wonderful. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank all the organizers for this conference, and especially I would like to thank Abovyan, who introduced me to organizers. And I would like to start my presentation. In the 19th-20th centuries, jewelry was one of the most important parts of Armenian folk costume for men and women, which expressed the wearer's aesthetic perception and beliefs. Among women's adornments were head and hair decorations, necklaces, bracelets, belts, rings, etc. Silver and gold adornments were created in different historical regions of Western and Eastern Armenia, as well as other centers of Armenian diaspora. In 1915, during the Armenian genocide, not only the Armenian population of Western Armenia was killed, but also Armenian treasures, including jewelry, were looted and destroyed. Some of the surviving artworks appeared in Armenia and world museums or private collections. The National Gallery of Armenia has an amazing collection of silver gems and is exceptional in terms of its richness and variety. First of all, I would like to mention that unfortunately this topic, the jewelry, was not properly studied because all of these pieces, as I mentioned, were kept in different museums, and it was hard for scholars to study these pieces. So this is my first steps these years that I started searching in these private collections, in museums all over the world, and I have more or less clear image of the Armenian jewelry. So let me start by showing a few. Let me start by showing a few plates. This from National Gallery's collection, which were decorations for the heads, and women were wearing on the feast days. These plates, okay, yes, these plates were decorated with chains and pendants that are in almond shape, symbolizing a new moon. And these capes were made in techniques of chasing, stamping, filigree, and decorated with precious stones. One of the most widespread ornaments of historic Armenia was a pair of adornments that are called shamshik. In Armenia we call it also Satenik, which means hair like a dove, in the shape of a dove. And these pieces were hanging from the shoulders on both sides of the front. The other important part of Armenian costume were necklaces, jewelry, were necklaces with stylized dragons that occupy a special place in Armenian adornments. Two-headed, opposite-looking dragons are in the top row in vertical position. This kind of necklaces belong to the Urartian necklaces type. And it is interesting that it's very common, and it stayed very common until the end of 20th century. And even now, jewelry makers are creating new ways of these decorations. Belt was an important part of Armenian costume, and Armenian belts were made by chasing, engraving, sealing, gilding, and needle plating techniques. These belts can be divided into groups according to the shape of their buckles: frog, oval, dome, rectangular, etc. From the structure of the buckle, it is clear for which gender it was intended. For example, butterfly, oval, and frog belts were worn by women. People believed that it was protecting the wearer from evil and danger, but also provided power to give birth. In the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly in Karin and Van, the delicate parts of silver belts were often gilded. A group of silver belts were decorated and with engravings made of the Nelo technique. some of which were decorated with plants and flowers, and others presented images of Baskurakan, historical Armenia, now Turkey, monuments with the inscriptions. There is a beautiful example in the collection of National Gallery that is decorated with butterfly ribbon buckle, which is adorned with spherical shapes and rosettes. The edges of this belt are decorated with gold and oval medallions. On the top are gilded. It is noteworthy that one of the medallions depicts the image of Mother Armenia, Spirit Armenia. It shows a woman looking sadly at the ruined cities of Armenia. Representation of this theme can be found also on bracelets, silver boxes of cigarettes, and several other designs, mainly made in Van or in other historical areas of Armenia. I found similar belts with representations of monasteries and flowers created in Baskurakan in different collections, such as Armenian Museum of America in Massachusetts, as well as the permanent exhibition of Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. And in contrast to previous ones, the story of the later is known. It was created in 1880s in Van by Master Vahe Chookaszian for his wife Agapi. Another belt from National Gallery's collection is decorated with butterfly ribbon buckle and 23 vertically placed rectangles. The boards are knitted open-work filigree adorned with grains that are creating the shape of a flower. It's interesting that the buckle is made in mesh of strips decorated with flowers, grains, and spherical shapes. This jewelry is a unique gem, and I haven't seen a similar belt in any other museums or collections. Based on the study of historical photos, I can assume that this belt with such boards was created and worn in Sebastian area. The most lavishly decorated belt from National Gallery's collection consists of 34 elongated panels that are decorated with filigree and many double treated flowers. Unlike the central ones, the other flowers are gilded. Both the ornaments and the buckle are adorned with grains, which are sometimes inside the rosette, sometimes in the form of separate roll. The buckle with butterfly ribbon is multi-layered. There is a large rosette in the center, and the whole surface is decorated with small flowers and grains. During my research, I didn't find such a magnificent belt in any other museum or collection. As famous scholar Yerevan noted, it is obvious that the silversmith, encouraged by the payment of the customer, made a wonderful piece of jewelry which should be remembered as a unique gem. According to the scholar, this beautiful gem belt was created in Karin, or perhaps Ahala, which is in Georgia, by Armenian silversmith, which is considered Ahala is considered the later Karin's sub-school. Next, two belts from the collection have butterfly ribbon buckles and are different from the previous ones, as these were made from fully flexible woven bands. They have many layers, and buckles have many layers, and silver-plated lower one has a wave decoration. Then another gilded ribbon is attached to it, and there is a convex 3-layer ornament and rosette flattened to it. This belt differs from the examples with similar buckles in the collection due to the structure of the flower with silver mesh decoration. The second one has a longitudinal strip band, which resembles those that are kept in Armenian Museum of America and Russian Museum of Photography, and it is considered that this kind of belts with such longitudinal striped bands were created in Karin. However, it is known that belts and bracelets with such decorations were created also in Trabzon. For example, in a private collection of Satenik Chookaszian, there is a similar belt and bracelet that were made by Master Abovyan from Trabzon. Next, unique belt from National Gallery's collection. This is the private collections of Chookaszian. And the next unique belt from the collection has also a fully flexible woven band with longitudinal stripes in different parts of it has a tubra. It should be noted that the buckle is not in the shape of a ribbon. By the way, if anyone doesn't know, Tugra was the personal emblem of Sultan, the autograph containing the name of the owner, and it was common in the Ottoman Empire to put this kind of tugras, which helps us to identify when exactly this belt or any other jewelry was made. The whole surface is decorated with flowers, grains, and small rhombuses. And it is interesting that in this example, we have ornament in the shape of fleur-de-lis decorated with grains. This decoration creates a royal look, and it is well known that curved lily, fleur-de-lis, was used in the coats of arms of many European nations, mainly in the coats of arms of monarchs of France, as well as Medicis and others. Thus makes this belt a unique gem. This is, by the way, the Sultan that I mentioned. And after studying the tugra, as well as the autographs of other sultans, I found out that this one represents the tugra of the 31st Sultan of Ottoman Empire, Abdülmecid, and later ruled between 1839 and 1861, and based on the technical and stylistical similarities, can be concluded that this belt must have been created by an Armenian master from Van during this period. By the way, Abdülmecid first many times had been painted by Armenian brothers, Armenian royal painters, and diplomats Ruben and Sekou Manas. So after studying belts with longitudinal stripes, I concluded that either these bands were created in Trabzon and then buckles were added in different locations, or Armenian silversmiths from different areas were capable to make them. As I mentioned above, silver belts were created in different centers of Armenian diaspora. Unique belt from National Gallery's collection has a buckle in the shape of a ribbon, but unlike the previous ones, it is vertically placed. In the center of the buckle, there is a rosette above and below, which is a single feeder, and that seems to merge with the pin on the top of the buckle. The head of the latter consists of a fleur-de-lis and union of two birds looking in opposite directions. The pin is connected to the belt with a chain. The belt consists of 8 large and thick rectangular horizontal boards, and in the center of each is a rosette with 2 birds looking at each other. Based on the study of historical photos, as well as the collection of in the Armenian Museum of New Julfa, Iran, I think that this belt and 2 others that are kept in the Historical Museum of Armenia and Folk Art Museum were created in New Julfa. These belts of National Gallery's collection consist only of a buckle and decorative buttons and leather band. So this is the historical photos on which you can see this kind of belts. And yes. Now going further, I would like to represent the last main part of women's jewelry, which are created from the buckles, silver buckles, and the decorative buttons that are attached to the leather band. Buckles and buttons decorated with rich floral ornaments in needle plating technique. After studying the historical photos as well as the collections of different museums, I am convinced that these types of belts were created mainly in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, and Syunik. From there, such belts and the whole costume group were also widespread in Rock province, Nakhchivan, Georgia, and then also in New Julfa, Iran. One of the above-mentioned belts is decorated with elongated sideboards of buckle, which end with the heads of 2 birds, eagles, looking in different directions. This belt is decorated with simple floral decoration, one which has a rosette with 4 round holes. The decorative buttons attached to the leader are in the shape of rosette, star, cross, etc. From the men's belt collection, it is worth mentioning belts that have dome-shaped and quadrangular longitudinal cut cylinders shaped buckles. Among the men's belt collection of the National Gallery stands out luxurious example with a combination of silver and gold-plated parts. It consists of 55 decorative boards and the large domed buckle, which is multi-tired, thank you, with different decorations on rings. It is interesting that the edge of the belt is decorated with bearded lace-type ornament, and the chain of the rings hanging from the belt, and there is a Georgian inscription on the part below the buckle. According to the hallmark and master's initials, it was created during 1889 and 1896 in Tbilisi by silversmith CE, the first letters of the name, which might be either Sakis Davidovich or Sakis of Igor. Similar belt from the National Gallery's collection has the surname of a master preserved, Arapetov. During my research, I found 5 more belts that were created by the same silversmith that are kept in different museums of Armenia. And as well as National Gallery's example, I think that all of this is by far the largest collection of the belts known to us, created by the same master, and consists of diverse types of belts. In my opinion, the silversmith is Mugakishnikov's Arapetov, who worked in Armenian market of Tbilisi, Georgia, during 1893 and 1914. It is worth mentioning that on the lower part of the buckle, the image of a grape cluster and wine jug, pig and glass are represented with no technique. And on the belt from Treasury of Sea of Boleshniatin, the representation of a quinto is seen. Interestingly, the Russian photographer Dmitry Yermakov had depicted quinto from Tbilisi in the same position next to the table. Summarizing, I should underline that each of the belts from National Gallery's collection is a unique piece and is different from similar ones kept in other museums, which testifies to the high artistic taste of the skillful silversmiths. At the same time, the workers had traveled from one place to another and had influenced local craftsmen, which made it harder to identify the exact location where these gems were created. Hopefully, study of other silver works will help to learn more about our masters. Thank you.
I have a question. Were those belts in the exhibition adornment, which was held at yes?
One of the pieces were shown there, but during that exhibition, they represented all different kinds of jewelry. That's why belts are not strictly the main topic of the exhibition, but some of them, they have a very beautiful collection, and mainly with historical images. Some of the belts have historical images of from different periods. So it's very interesting, yeah.
Thank you. Before I open the floor for questions and comments, there are 2 announcements. So for those who have just joined us, we have translation going from Russian into English and from English into Armenian. For those who are interested, there are kits for you. You can find them over there. And plus, there is a translation. There is a stream. There is a stream in English, and it's available on YouTube. You just follow the link NLO Books streams. So I guess you will find it. Otherwise, there will be, it's youtube.com / NLO Books, NLO Books / streams. And you can follow this stream now. Okay. Thank you so much. Apologies for that. Questions and answers. Hopefully. Comments. Yeah, sure.
First of all, thank you for the talk. And I was just wondering, in the last visit to Yerevan, I visited Lucy Kaguletsky Museum, who was a famous artist, and also she was a collector of traditional costumes and jewelry. And there I learned that because of the chain of terrible events that happened at the beginning of the 20th century, many jewelry makers, silver makers have left Armenia and migrated to Europe and some other countries. And I was wondering whether you can maybe shed some light. Do you follow their destiny? Do we know how it changed the industry of silver and jewelry making in Armenia?
Thank you. Thank you for the interesting question. Yes, the collection of Lucy Kaguletsky is one of the interesting ones. She has different pieces from all over the historical Armenia. And about the silversmiths, yes, some of them appeared in different parts of the world, and we know that they kept working. And for example, some of the Armenians appeared in Syria, in Aleppo, and started working there. And they preserved all the techniques that we used to have. Others were killed, unfortunately, and we have lost some of the small techniques, and also there are techniques that, unfortunately, for example, nail plating, they are not doing it anymore, for example. We know some of the stories, and some parts are preserved, and one of the scholars recently started digging in this direction. I may give you more details if you like. And it's very interesting to see how it developed and what kind of new techniques appeared. For example, one of the silversmiths, which originally his roots are coming from one area, he appeared in Iran. His name is Abovyan. Afterwards, he came to Yerevan and was living here. And he was combining techniques and style from one area with ornaments from Armenian culture and creating new ones. So you can see his works in different museums. These are the Art Museum and also in Folk Museum over here. So it is very interesting. He's one of the rare ones that we know the story that he came to Yerevan, Armenia, but others, unfortunately, are spread all over the world.
You're welcome. Any comments, questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.